Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Jaya Vrindavana Dham Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Radhesham Radhesham Lalita Vishaka Jaya Radhesham Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivarajagacharya Ashtotara Sat Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivarajagacharya Ashtotara Sat Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupada Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupada Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupada Vaishnava Sarabhoma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्ट दास रघुनाथ सदगोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नमाचार्य श्रीला हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपिका श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। श्री वृंदावन मायपुर धाम की जय। गंगामयी यमुनामयी की जय। भक्ति देवी तुलसी देवी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन वर्तमान गुरु वृंद की जय। सामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय। गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि। All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome everyone. Today we are studying from Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, titled Contents of Gita Summarized. Shloka number 41. Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo avasiyanam vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo avasayinam vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo avasayinam vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo avasayinam vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Word to word meaning. Vyavasayatmika resolute in Krishna consciousness. Buddhihi, intelligence. Eka, only one. Iha, in this world. Kuru Nandana, O beloved child of the Kurus. Bahusakaha, having various branches. He, indeed. Ananta, unlimited. Cha, also. Buddhaya, intelligence. Vyavasayinam, of those who are not in Krishna consciousness. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Translation. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. Purport. A strong faith that by Krishna consciousness one will be elevated to highest perfection of life is called Vyavasayatmika intelligence. The Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 22.62 states, Shraddha sabde vivasve kahe shruhrudda nischaya Krishna bhakti kaile sarva karma kritahaya. Faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. When one is engaged in the duties of Krishna consciousness, he need not act in relationship to the material world with obligations to family traditions, humanity, or nationality. Fruitative activities are the engagements of one's reactions from past good or bad deeds. When one is awake in Krishna consciousness, he need no longer endeavor for good results in his activities. When one is situated in Krishna consciousness, all activities are on the absolute plane, for they are no longer subject to dualities like good and bad. The highest perfection of Krishna consciousness is renunciation of the material conception of life. This state is automatically achieved by progressive Krishna consciousness. The resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on knowledge. Vasudeva sarvam iti sa mahatma sudullabha. A person in Krishna consciousness is the rare good soul who knows perfectly that Vasudeva or Krishna is the root of all manifested causes. As by watering the root of a tree, one automatically distributes water to the leaves and branches. So by acting in Krishna consciousness, one can render the highest service to everyone, namely self, family, society, country, humanity, etc. If Krishna is satisfied by one's actions, then everyone will be satisfied. Service in Krishna consciousness is, however, best practiced under the able guidance of a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Krishna, who knows the nature of the student and who can guide him to act in Krishna consciousness. As such, to be well versed in Krishna consciousness, one has to act firmly and obey the representative of Krishna, and one should accept the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master as one's mission in life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur instructs us in his famous prayers for the spiritual master as follows. Yasya prasada bhagavad prasado yasya prasada nagati kutopi dhyayam stuvam tasya yasya trisandyam vande guru shri charanaravindam. By satisfaction of the spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes satisfied. And by not satisfying the spiritual master, there is no chance of being promoted to the plane of Krishna consciousness. I should therefore meditate and pray for His mercy 3 times a day and offer my respectable obeisances unto Him, my spiritual master. The whole process, however, depends on perfect knowledge of the soul beyond the conception of the body, not theoretically but practically, when there is no longer a chance for sense gratification manifested in fruitive activities. One who is not firmly fixed in mind is diverted by various types of fruitive acts. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome everyone, and I ask for everyone's blessings so that I can speak for my purification as well as for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada and my Gurudev and all assembled Vaishnavas. So we are continuing our study of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, and chapter 2 has 72 verses. And the present section is dealing about Buddhi Yoga. Krishna is asking Arjuna to fight on the platform of the Buddhi Yoga. So that means using his spiritual intelligence. And fight, then you will have no reactions. So this section goes from 39 to 53. And Acharyas explained that the Buddhi Yoga explained here also includes some part of Karma Yoga. But Krishna also specifically he explains Buddhi Yoga in Bhagavad Gita 10.10 and Bhagavad Gita 18.57. So today the contents of the class, we will be discussing few points. First of all, we will see how this verse is so significant for ISKCON devotees. Especially we will be talking about Srila Prabhupada's personal experience. Then we will discuss about what is Buddhi Yoga and how many kinds of intelligence and what is the solution that we will see. And we will also discuss the story of Puru, and there will be the final is the personal application, how we can come to get some personal applications from this. So the first one that we will deal is how this verse is very significant to ISKCON devotees. So I want to read something from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. This is Prabhupada encountering, he is meeting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for the first time. So as we all know, Prabhupada went to meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur on the request of his friend. So so they entered, they have seen Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was sitting, and while the two young men were still rising and preparing to sit before any preliminary formalities of conversation began, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati immediately said to them, "You are educated young men, why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message throughout the whole world?" So they didn't even have a formal conversation with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. They didn't even introduce themselves. They were just sitting. And then already Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj told them that you're educated man, you should go out and preach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message. Abhay could not hardly believe what he had just heard. They had not even exchanged views. Yet this sadhu was telling them what they should do. Sitting face to face with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Abhay was gathering his wits and trying to gain comprehensible impression, but this person has already told them to become preachers and to go all over the world. Abhay was immediately impressed, but he wasn't going to drop his intelligent skepticism. After all, there were assumptions in what the sadhu had said. Abhay had already announced himself by his dress to be a follower of Gandhi, and he felt the impulse to raise an argument. Yet, he continued to listen to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta speak. He also began to feel won over sadhu's strength of conviction. He could sense that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did not care anything but Lord Chaitanya, and that this was what made him great. This is why followers had gathered around him, and why Abhay himself felt drawn, inspired, humbled, and wanted to hear more. But he obliged to make an argument to test the truth. Drawn irresistibly into discussion, Abhay spoke up in answer to the words of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had so tersely spoken in the first seconds of their meeting. "Who will hear your Chaitanya's message?" Abhay queried. "We are a dependent country. First, India must become independent. How can we spread Indian culture if we are under British rule?" Abhay had not asked haughtily, just to be provocative, provocative, yet his question was clearly a challenge. If he were to take this sadhu's remark to them as a serious one, then there was nothing in Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's demeanor to indicate that he had not been serious. Abhay felt compelled to question how could he propose such a thing while India was still dependent. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta replied in quiet, deep voice that Krishna consciousness did not have to wait for a change in Indian politics, nor was it dependent on who ruled. Krishna consciousness was so important, so exclusively important, that it could not wait. Abhay was struck by his boldness. How could he say such a thing? The whole world of India beyond this little Utladanga rooftop was in turmoil, seemed to support what Abhay had said. Many famous leaders of Bengal, many saints, even Gandhi himself, men who were educated and spiritually minded, all might very well have asked this same question, challenging this sadhu's relevancy. And yet he was dismissing everything and everyone as if they were of no consequence. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta continued, whether one power or another ruled was a temporary situation. But the eternal reality is Krishna consciousness, and the real self is the spirit soul. No man-made political system therefore could actually help humanity. This was the verdict of Vedic scriptures and the line of spiritual masters. Although everyone is an eternal servant of God, when one takes himself to be the temporary body and regards nation of his birth as worshipable, he comes under illusion. The leaders and followers of the world's political movements, including the movement for Swaraj, were simply cultivating this illusion. Real welfare work, whether individual, social or political, should help prepare a person for his next life and help him establish his eternal relationship with the Supreme. So we'll stop here, but then here we see how Prabhupada opens the purport saying that what is a strong faith? The strong faith means that one knows that Krishna consciousness elevates one to the highest perfection of life. And this is what is depicted in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's Maharaj talk, first speech with Abhay Charan. And then in Surrender Unto Me book, His Grace Burijan Prabhu records, Srila Prabhupada once told to his disciples that in 1950s, that even before he came to the West to spread Krishna consciousness, he actually read the purport given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur for this verse, and how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quoted this verse of Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasada, and then he was fixed in his resolve to follow Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's order to preach Krishna consciousness in English. So Prabhupada is demonstrating his unflinching faith and shows how to surrender to his spiritual master's mission. And that's what Prabhupada is also saying, that one has to come to the point that one has to surrender to the spiritual master's mission. And not only that, in another occasion, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj asked Prabhupada, whenever you get some money, print books. And this is also the mood of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. He established Brihad Mridanga, that means printing press, so that the sound of this Mridanga, printing the books and distributing this knowledge, can be spread all over the world. And here Prabhupada also says in the purport, saying in the third paragraph or second paragraph, the resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on the knowledge. Only when we have knowledge, that is the point where we can actually become very resolute in our determination. And we see similar examples in the actions of disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Like I was hearing to my spiritual master, His Holiness Devamrita Swami Maharaj, how they were part of the publishing of the Chaitanya Charitamrita marathon. So Prabhupada asked them to publish the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita in 2 months. And it was very difficult. They were thinking that how is it possible? But they became resolute in their determination, and they published. And also he was explaining how Prabhupada said that if my books are distributed in the Eastern Bloc, Soviet countries, the iron curtain will fall down. So my spiritual master was saying that how they endeavored, it was very, very difficult, that they used to smuggle books into the countries, especially Eastern Germany, where they used to foil wrap Ishopanishads and then they used to tuck it onto the train compartments underneath, and that's how they used to smuggle books into the other countries. And my spiritual master was saying that how as soon as the books got into those countries, actually the iron curtain has fallen down. So we see, and also there are many Srila Prabhupada disciples where someone were asked to get down and just establish temples or to run the centers. We see such a demonstration of this unflinching faith in the spiritual master, their one-pointed intelligence. And even the grand disciples, the many grand disciples in the current movement, where they have so much faith in their spiritual master, and they actually strive through different difficult situations in pushing this Krishna conscious movement. So this is very significant verse, because carrying out from Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON, to till date, there are many examples who live around us who are very resolute in their purpose in pushing Krishna consciousness. Now Krishna here, we will go to the next segment of discussing the Buddhi Yoga. Krishna here twice he talks about Buddhi, he uses the word Buddhi. Once he talks about Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, and the other he says the Buddhayo Vyavasayinam. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, you become resolute in your determination. How you will become resolute? You have to become fixed. How? By using your intelligence. Otherwise, if you don't make it one-pointed, it becomes many-branched. Bahushaka anantascha. It becomes unlimited. So it itself draws that what is this many-branched? Many-branched means aspiring to go to heavenly planets or to have material gains, which we will see in the next 2 verses. So intelligence that will put us only in the fruitive work, that is a cause of our material bondage. So it is material intelligence. And the intelligence which helps us to regain our constitutional position is the intelligence that will help us to come out of this entanglement. This is spiritual intelligence. So Buddhi Yoga itself means action in Krishna consciousness, because we are using this intelligence to endeavor for Krishna's pleasure. And in this process one actually goes back home, back to Godhead. So Buddhi Yoga is actually the process where one gets out of the entanglement and makes them free. Now when we see the hierarchy of intelligence, Krishna talks about hierarchy of intelligence in Bhagavad Gita 3.42. Indriyani para pranayahur indriyabhya para mana manasastu para buddhi yo buddhi paratastu saha. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul is even higher than the intelligence. So Krishna is already placing all the material elements, how one is above the other. First comes the senses. Senses is higher than the dull matter. And above the senses is the mind. And above the mind is the intelligence. And above the intelligence is the soul. And we see also the very famous picture that's in our Bhagavad Gita. How we see you don't have this picture here. Like the chariot is driven by the horses, and then the driver of the chariot is the intelligence, So buddhi is very, very important. Why? The role of intelligence is it discriminates in understanding the object and helps the senses whether to go for it or not to go for it. That's why it is the master of the senses. It is even the master of the mind. However, if we don't use intelligence to understand our constitutional position, we become kripanas, because we are just miserly. We are just we want to enjoy our senses and the body and the mind, while the brahmanas, the real educated brahmanas, are called udhara. Udhara means magnanimous. Why they are called magnanimous? Because they use intelligence for spiritual realization, and not only that, they go out and preach Krishna consciousness for the benefit of all, for everyone. Now the question comes, okay, we have this material intelligence, but then we want to go to spiritual intelligence, which is one pointed towards Krishna focus. So how can we develop this? We develop this by seeking for higher taste. Param drishtva nivartate. So that means we have to come in the association of the devotees and fortify our intelligence by reading the Shastra. By studying the Shastra, actually our intelligence becomes strong. This is the food for the thought. So Prabhupada gives an analogy that if by intelligence one engages the mind in Krishna consciousness, then automatically the mind becomes stronger. Even though the senses are very strong, they are like serpents with broken fangs. So you might have the senses very strong, they are pulling you. But if your intelligence is strong, it actually directs the mind to be engaged in devotional service. So these senses are no more going to cause you any harm. But even though the soul is the master of intelligence and mind and senses, unless it is strengthened by the association with Krishna and Krishna consciousness, there is every chance of falling down due to the agitated mind. So Bhagavad Gita 10.10, Krishna also says that he gives this spiritual intelligence. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogantam yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give understanding by which they can come to me. So if we are making that endeavor to engage somehow or the other in the devotional service, Krishna also does his part. That's his promise, that he will give this understanding. And Prabhupada very beautifully he explains in the purport, a person may have a bona fide spiritual master and may be attached to spiritual organization. But if he is not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from within gives him instructions so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. The qualification is that a person always engage himself in Krishna consciousness and with love and devotion render all kinds of services. He should perform some sort of work for Krishna, and that work be with love. If a devotee is not intelligent enough to make progress on the path of self-realization, but is sincere and devoted to the activities of devotional service, the Lord gives him a chance to progress and ultimately attain him. So it also tells that even if we are not intelligent enough, still Krishna will give that. He will give us that understanding, and that he makes our path very clear so that we will come back to him. So this is Krishna's promise. Now we will also see how, because this verse is talking about more on how to be dedicated to spiritual master, I wanted to tell a story from Srimad Bhagavatam 9th canto. This is the story of Yayati, the king Yayati. So King Yayati is the son of Nahusa, and King Yayati has 5 sons. So he was married to Devayani and then Samrishta. He had 5 sons, 2 sons with Devayani and 3 sons with Samrishta. At a point in the story, it comes that Devayani becomes very angry that he is actually giving time to Samrishta. So Devayani goes to his father's, Sukracharya, and she complains, you know, your son-in-law is not really that good what I thought. So Sukracharya becomes very angry, upset, and he curses Yayati that you become old and invalid. So Yayati begs him, you know, I want to enjoy, I haven't quenched my thirst of enjoying this senses. So how can you curse? See your daughter, what will happen to her? So again, Sukracharya sees everything in a proper frame of mind, and then he says, okay, you can be relieved of the curse if someone is ready to exchange your old age and invalidity with their youth. So Yayati goes and asks all of his 5 sons. The first son is the Yadu, and Yadu declines that I don't want to exchange. But of course Yadu has a higher purpose, because he declines, because if he has given his youth, at a point he will receive back his youth, right? Then again he has to go through all this material desires. And then Yadu knows that Krishna is going to appear in my dynasty. So if I delay, then the appearance of Krishna will be delayed. So for that reason Yadu says no. Then Yayati goes and asks the other 3 sons. But they are very adharmic. They are adharmic because they are very selfish. They just want to enjoy themselves. So they say that if we give, what about us? We don't want to suffer. Then Yayati goes to the last son, Puru. And then he asks Puru, you're my youngest son. It is your duty. Don't just deny like your other brothers. You know, you help your father. Then Puru accepts the curse. And in this regard, there is one shloka, Bhagavatam 9:18-44. Uttamas chintayantam kurvat proktva karitu majjama adhamo shraddhaya kuryat akruto charitam pituhu. This verse talks about how there are different kinds of disciples exist. A son who acts by anticipating what his father wants him to do is first class. And the one who acts upon receiving his father's order is second class. And one who executes his father's order irreverentially is third class. But a son who refuses his father's order is like his father's tool. So Puru is here thinking that, you know, I was not anticipating what my father wants, but rather now he has already asked me. If I don't accept what he wanted, then I won't even become second class, but I will be like third or fourth class, which I don't want to. I better be at least second class. So we don't want to go details into the story. The point we want to draw here is how there are 4 different disciples. There is progressive discipleship. That means first class, second class, third and fourth. So why is it important to understand there are 4 different classes of disciples? Because we want to see where we fit in, right? And how we want to become Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. How we want to become resolute in our determination in serving Srila Prabhupada, in serving our Guru's mission. So we will see the different definitions. The first class already knows the heart of the Guru, and he will be doing the needful even without being told. You no need to tell the disciple. He already understood, okay, my Guru would be liking this, me to do. So he already does that. And this is not coming out of his mental speculation or imagination, but this is coming from his intense, sincere practice of devotional service. And I took this one from His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Damodar Swami Maharaj's book, Spiritual Connection. So Maharaj states the example of Srila Prabhupada, how Srila Prabhupada arranged the ISKCON system. making practical adjustments for the people to adopt to Krishna consciousness. Because he knows Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj would be very pleased if this Krishna conscious movement is spread all over the world. But not everyone is in the situation to practice the standard of the Vedic times. So they were chanting 64 rounds. But what did Prabhupada did? He reduced it to 16 rounds of chanting. And Prabhupada was establishing ashrams for women so that they can also spiritually get, frontline education and training. And also we see how Prabhupada was involved in getting his disciples married. So there are many, many examples where how actually Prabhupada knows if I do this, it will please my spiritual master. Then the second class. The second class is one who is told what to do and who very happily and enthusiastically does this. So this disciple, he takes spiritual master's words and instructions as one's life and soul and executes his instruction with great attention. Now third class, one who hears Guru's instructions but has to be reminded again and again. You have to be acting on it, you have to be doing on it. Now the fourth class, he is disciple only in the name, but he never pays attention to the Guru's instructions. But either of the cases, like whatever the case, first, second, third, fourth, the Guru actually doesn't reject anyone, but he actually facilitates. This is something we have to understand. But of course, the disciple also will be reciprocating according to, reciprocates based on their sincerity and then their seriousness in Krishna consciousness. Then there was an example given in that book about a guru asking a disciple, disciple asking a guru, I know that you love all your disciples, but based on our proclamations and our sincerity, we all get different results. Isn't it, Gurudev? Then the Guru explains an example using an analogy of 3 dolls. He says, I have 3 dolls. One is made up of sugar, one is made up of cloth, one is made up of solid stone. One day I was washing my hands in river and accidentally all the 3 dolls fall into water. So the first doll, which is made up of sugar, it got dissolved in the water. So that is like Kanishta Adhikar. He will be swayed away very quickly because his faith is very weak. And the second doll is made up of cloths. He gets into the water, he gets absorbed, the water is absorbed into him, but he is not dissolved. That means he is in good standing, but still he cannot argue, he cannot fight about, but he is in a good standing, he still has strong faith. And the third doll is unaffected by water because he is solid, he is very strongly situated. He is in the category of Uttama Adhikari. So the Guru says that there are different disciples, but a disciple can be progressive. It's not that you have to be always on the Kanishta Adhikari. You can become Madhyama Adhikari and you can eventually turn to Uttama Adhikari also. So everyone can raise their level. And recently I was talking to my mentor and I was asking, I don't know, it was Krishna's mercy only. I was also talking about similar things that, I'm nowhere, I cannot understand what Gurudev says sometimes, how can I fix myself internally? And then my mentor told me many things, but one thing that struck me is, we are devotees in progress, like work in progress. So similarly, there is a progression that's happening internally for us. If we can accept where we are at, then we can progress where we want to go. But if we don't know where we are at, we won't go where we want to. So another example Maharaj gives in the book is an example of radio. When you tune the radio, first you have to tune and then you have to fine tune, right? You tune first time to get into the channel, but then you fine tune so that the sound is very clear. So initial tuning is tuning into our sadhana, the steady practice of our sadhana. And fine tuning is actually meditating upon what the Guru and the Parampara wants us to do, so that we can come closer to them. So in conclusion, we can take 3 personal applications out of this shloka. One is, a resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on knowledge. That means we have to fortify our intelligence by the help of the knowledge, by studying Srila Prabhupada's books and by helping to preach these books. Second, we should always engage in devotional service under the able guidance of spiritual master. Why? By that we are showing our sincerity. And we have seen in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Krishna says, someone is engaged constantly, I will give them the intelligence. So by showing by sincerity, Krishna will give us the right spiritual intelligence to do everything that is necessary for our Krishna consciousness. And the third is to engage our mind. You know, idle brain is devil's workshop, right? But the mind is always thinking, is always going through this process of thinking, feeling and willing. Whether you give the subject of spiritual matters or you don't, right? There is some subject that is always going on. But instead of giving material subjects, we have to give spiritual taste. So that if I was thinking of practical application would be, if I can think every day, how can I come closer to my spiritual master? That will also reignite what I want to, like how can I please? Then I'm always thinking, how will I do? Then there will be feeling. Then eventually maybe I will be willing to do something for him. But there is no thinking itself, how will we even be willing to do? Any gross actions come from the subtle actions, right? So this is engaging our mind in thinking, feeling and willing. So in summary, we have seen how this verse has a significant role in ISKCON devotees. We have seen how Buddhi Yoga, that means right application of spiritual knowledge, and which will come by practicing devotional service under the able spiritual master. And what is the hope giving? That Krishna will also help us by giving us the spiritual intelligence to carry on. And we have seen the case of Yayati, because what Yayati is offering to Puru is something very unacceptable. It's something very very difficult, impossible in one sense, that who is ready to take your invalidity and old age? But Puru does, because he wanted to obey his father. And we have seen how there are 4 kinds of disciples. And now we have to personally introspect and see where we are at. And instead of beating ourselves that I am this, I am that, but rather we can make a plan that how can I become better. If I am in category 4, 4th disciple, then maybe I can become category 3. Then if I am at 3, then maybe I can aspire to become 2. And if I am 2, then maybe I should become 1 and stay 1, right? So if there are any corrections or comments or questions, please.
One sloka have come in the Gita, Vasudeva Sarvamiti Mahatma Subhula. So please explain.
So a devotee who is in the right understanding, he knows that everything belongs to Krishna, everything rests on Krishna. So he doesn't see anything separate from Krishna. Even it's a material world, but its material world is also the energy of the Lord. So the devotee is actually, he's become Krishna conscious because he sees everything in relationship with Krishna. So that's my understanding. Thank you.
One chopai is also in Gita, Jane so jisbehu janai, Jane tum hi ho jaye. Can you explain?
I don't know this one. Sorry.
जाने सो जिसमें in रामायण it is said श्री राम ने सब जग जाने करूं प्रणाम योग जीव पाए. This similar to Vasudev Sarvam, but we don't know God. That sloka I asked. We can know the God by His grace only.
Yeah, that's what even Krishna says. That's what we were discussing. Bhagavad Gita 10:10. Sorry. Where He will give the spiritual understanding. That's how to come to Him and how to know about Him and to understand Him. Yeah. So, if there are no questions or comments, we'll stop here. Thank you so much. Oh, Krishna.
Yayati's first son was spirituality.
First son is Yayati.
What's your spirituality? First person.
But Yayati's first son is Yayati.
Yayati's first son is Yayati.
Yes.
He was in spirituality.
No. He is how Krishna was born in the Yadu dynasty. Yeah, so he is actually the forefather of for Krishna.
Thank you so much for your please message.
But I always say that we in the association of the notes very proud of Please bless you.